I was thinking about this with some of the questions that have come in with the revenge travel that's been going on, where a lot of people have been doing more travel than normal, maybe doing more exotic trips than they historically have done, and then people will end up in a bit of a bind. And so I wanted to explain an industry that used to be such a big industry in the United States and almost vanished, and now is a real thing again. You may or may not know that, going way back in the Wayback Machine, that when I was very young, I opened a travel agency that became a chain of agencies. And it's actually the business I was in that I sold to someone and retired at age 31. And that was my first retirement. Never intended to work again. Weird story how I ended up doing what I do now. But when I was a travel agent, and when I ran travel agencies, owned travel agencies, the business was completely different. There was no internet. And if you wanted to take a trip, you wanted to book it, whatever, you needed a travel agent because the computer systems were frightfully expensive per month. And it was all in what are known as mnemonics, where you had to go to school to learn how just to type in an inquiry on the travel agency computers. It was a very, very different kind of thing. And so travel agents issued tickets, they booked the hotels, they did all that stuff. Well, then as the internet rose up, the whole nature of the business changed, and people who didn't adapt, they died, because you weren't needed to just do transactions. The travel agency business kind of held on, much smaller than it had been before, but now it's growing again, because even though we have the tools of the internet to book our own travel, when you're doing a kind of journey you're unfamiliar with, let's say you're doing a what used to be called safari, what are they called now? Going to a reserve in Africa, or you're doing an exotic trip at a remote location, or you've never taken a trip overseas and you don't really know how to start, how to do it. There are very experienced people who've been through proper education that are certified to be able to help you build a trip and plan a trip and deal with the uh-ohs that can happen on that trip. And so there are a number of sources that we have listed on how to find a good travel agent item on Clark.com, organizations that you can get recommendations from. But my favorite is your friends that take exotic trips and all that. You ask them if they use a travel agent, who they use, because then word of mouth is one of the best ways for you to find someone. Now, here's the way it works today. Typically, you can also find, someone who has various certifications as a travel agent, but I really like the friend thing or the various steps we talk about on Clark.com. But you will be paying that travel agent money as an hourly rate, like you'd pay an accountant or a lawyer. An exception to that would be like a cruise specialist who earns significant commissions from the cruise line in order to book the cruise. And you do have some of the inherent conflicts I talk about with like investment people, is that in that case, they may steer you towards a cruise that's offering, bonus commissions or whatever. But generally, people that work in this business have such a joy about it. What they're recommending because they love it. They've experienced it, and they want you to have that same joy. So the reason to hire one, the reason you hire a travel agent to plan your trip and to be there when you have an oops, when you're on that trip, is because you realize at some point it is too complicated. Krista, I think your situation was a perfect example with the family trip that your family's taking this summer. I can't even imagine how many hours you've spent planning the trip, and it's kind of overwhelmed you at times.
It's a lot. I mean, it's fun too to find everything, but I'm really glad I use the app TripIt. I really love that app. What do you use to keep track of your travel plans?
My brain.
Didn't you used to use Kayak?
I did, but I just.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's like like three
let's
parts
hope I don't
of a
mess
trip.
up. My brain malfunctions.
Well, you
have a meltdown.
You helped me a lot. I was getting really stuck on one part of the trip, and you were like, "You need to keep it simple." Like you kind of had an intervention with me.
But you were really overthinking. But the thing is, what you won't have, other than your own resources and trying to find me wherever I am, is if something does go wrong, you won't have that expert travel agent you can turn to and say, help, this is going on. I don't know what to do. And you would not have had to spend the zillion hours you've spent trying to plan this with all four of you coming different ways from different places. And wow.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited about it. But now that I'm through with the planning, I just look forward to it.
You're just excited.